paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Vedyam vastavam atra vastu. Shivadam tapatrayon mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite. Kim vapurir ishvaraha. Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra. Krite bihi sususubhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam Sukhamukad amritam dravya samyutam Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam Muhur aho rasikabu vibhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Okay, so we'll go back to Canto 1, Chapter 9, verse number 9. We didn't read the purport. Bhismadeva, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas, or religious preachers, or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhismadeva was one of the 12 great authorities and in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words. And he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Well, there are many important points in this purport. Even today, there's a raging controversy about the appointment of women to become Diksha Gurus. So here Prabhupada says, expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas, or religious preachers, or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, And if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be an expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. So, this would be looked upon gleefully by those who want to appoint women as Diksha Gurus. And said, just see, Prabhupada's saying that, you can make adjustments in time and place. Well, actually, he doesn't exactly say that. He says expert religionists. And all the great acharyas have, in the past, adjusted the religious principles in terms of time and place, because there's different climates and situations. Okay, now, some people are saying, well, look, in America, in North America, and in Europe, there's such a strong movement about equality of men and women. And there are certain statements in Prabhupada's books that are, let's say, considered offensive by this new phenomenon of equality of men and women. So that's their argument. And then they say, well, there's some scriptural evidence for it also, because Prabhupada says that very few, but some exceptional women can become gurus. So this is basically that side. And the other side, they say, but Prabhupada himself didn't do it. He made adjustments. Like, for example, he let women live in the temple with the men, brahmacharis and brahmacharinis. And he also gave women the Gayatri mantra and let them perform deity worship. Whereas in India, he didn't let the women perform deity worship, but in America they were allowed to perform, and in Europe and the West they were allowed to perform deity worship. And so he made so many adjustments, but he never appointed any woman as a GBC, nor did he ever appoint any women as initiating gurus. So, and he gave one interview in Chicago, I think it's in the 1970s, and this one lady, a newspaper woman, was interviewing him, and she was like very interested in what is the situation of women in your movement. And Prabhupada said they are respected. And she said, I think she said, like, well, don't you say that women are less intelligent? And then Prabhupada said that, well, even medically it's proven that the weight and size of a woman's mind is less than that of a man. So this is a highly controversial subject, right? And but the point was that the natural psychology of men and women is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the history of Kasyapa Muni and Diti and Aditi. What did you say? What? That's different. Yeah, it's Kasyapa. You have to read the Bhagavatam, Prabhu. You're not reading enough. Which devotee said? Backside. Okay, you have to pay attention. Right? Anyway, there it's explained that in the psychology of men and women, it's natural that the man be dominant. And one example he gives of it is of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. Dhritarashtra was blind. And Gandhari, even if he wasn't blind, Gandhari was superior to him. She was a yogini. She was very renowned. She had certain mystical powers. She was a great woman. And by the way, Kandahar in Afghanistan is named after Gandhari. But that was where she came from. She came from that northern part of India. Well, when she got married, she willfully put a blindfold over her eyes for the rest of her life so that she would never consider herself superior to her husband. See, that's one example in Vedic tradition. There's only one time after the Battle of Kurukshetra when the Pandavas went to meet Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and sort of apologized for killing all their kids. And having such a carnage. At that time, Gandhari, sort of hugged Arjuna, who killed most of her kids. And but then she sort of lifted her blindfold a little bit and looked down at his feet and burned his feet. That's how powerful. She could have killed him if she wanted to. See? So we see that in the Vedic tradition, women have always been subordinate to men. Now, subordinate to qualified men. Was Sita subordinate to Ravana? No, because he wasn't qualified. But she was completely subordinate to her husband, to the point that although she was a princess who always lived in opulence, she agreed to walk out into the desert, into the forest with her husband and live the life of an ascetic. So, and then she also agreed to be separated from her husband, even though she was pregnant, so that he could establish Ekapatni Vrat. A man should be loyal only to one woman, and the king he wanted to establish the correct behavior of a ruler of society, especially as a king. So she agreed to be separated from him because people were criticizing him through her, saying that, I don't want to be like Ramana. I'm like Rama, who was cuckolded by his wife. The cuckold is an old English word. You can look it up on the dictionary to find out what it means. So here we have a lot of evidence. Prabhupada himself never appointed any women as GBCs or gurus, although when he said they can become gurus, women are naturally gurus. The mother is the guru of a child. She teaches the child everything for a certain number of years. And many women in the past were Shiksha gurus. Now, if you read the Srimad Chaitanya Charitamrita, which not everybody reads, you'll see in Adi Leela, Canto 1, Adi Leela, and first chapter, verse 35 to 47, that Shiksha and Diksha gurus are equal and should be respected equally. So, therefore, many women in the past were Shiksha gurus, equal to the Diksha gurus, and considered leaders of society. One was Satyavati, the mother of the Kuru dynasty. So, and there were many other women. And there was one time the wife of Nityananda, who was actually the leader of the Vaishnavas after her husband disappeared. And she was considered like a guru, and she actually had some disciples. But that's not, see, exception does not change a rule. There are exceptions of extremely, let's say, exceptional people, like the wife of Nityananda, but that does not change the rule. Just like there are many great devotees, but that doesn't mean they're on the level of Prabhupada as the Parama authority or supreme authority in ISKCON, right? Just because there are many great devotees in ISKCON doesn't mean they are the founder acharya of the movement, or they can replace Srila Prabhupada, you see. So a self-effulgent acharya is a rare thing. Prabhupada was a self-effulgent acharya. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a self-effulgent acharya, able to lead hundreds and thousands of people back to Godhead. Therefore, Prabhupada explains in one letter to a devotee that, when there was some question about Ban Maharaj and how he had reinitiated one of Prabhupada's disciples, and there was some controversy going on. And Prabhupada basically said, look, there are different levels of acharyas. He is not on my level. So let's not, confuse things. So we have to understand how to make this movement go forward and not make decisions that divide it unnecessarily. So there are different considerations. That one is, how can we preach more effectively in the West? And the other consideration is, this is an international movement. We're not only preaching in the West, we're also preaching in India and other places. So we have to make, if there are any adjustments made, it has to be made with consideration of the entire movement, not simply North America or Europe or Australia, etc. So here we see that expert religionists or great acharyas can make adjustments, because there are different climates and different situations in different parts of the world. Like one adjustment is, in Iran, the devotees don't do street sankirtan, because they would be arrested immediately, put into a high security prison, and tortured. Right? And in Russia, during the communist period, devotees were advised not to do sankirtan. When they did, they were arrested and put in jail. Right? They did do that. Some devotees were also printing books. I got into a big argument once with the GBC of India. I told them, look, you are by insisting that the devotees illegally print books in illegal printing presses and underground situations, you're subjecting them to be breaking the laws of Russia and the Soviet Union. They'll be put in jail and they'll be tortured. And he didn't listen. He didn't, take that seriously. He said, "No, sankirtan is more important. Book distribution is more important than this or that." I said, "Then why don't you go there and do it? Why don't you go there and do it? Why are you asking your disciples to do it? Why don't you do it? You go there and secretly print the books and distribute it, and see what happens to you." But he didn't listen, and at least 3 devotees died because they were tortured. One devotee, he refused to eat any food. The only food he could eat was bread. And even that he didn't eat all the time. He used the bread to make chanting beads, right? So he could chant. And he left his body meditating on his guru. Well, a couple years later, his guru blooped, left the movement. So what, it becomes a very, strange thing that people who give wrong instructions at the wrong time, they have a serious, let's call it karma that comes onto them. So you have to be very careful how you advise people. And we have to be very careful about interpretations of Prabhupada's instructions. So now the question you're asking in your mind, then Harivilas is against women becoming initiated gurus. No, I'm not against women becoming Siksha gurus. And I'm not against the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Siksha and Diksha gurus are equal. And that has never been clearly established. It's clearly established by Shastra, but it's not clearly established by practice. There's a difference between what's true in Shastra and what's actually practiced as a result of Shastric understanding. So if Shiksha and Diksha Gurus were equal, then any Diksha Guru could say to his disciple, you can take instruction from this Mataji because she's as qualified as I am in understanding the scriptures and in following it. And that would solve the problem. So there are different ways of solving a problem, but you have to take into consideration many, many what's called corollary, or what's called collateral, let's say, damage that can be done by making a decision. You have to, just like any devotee, and here Prabhupada says this also, the symptom of a devotee is before they make a decision, they consider the collateral effects of it. Because if you make a decision without considering what could happen in the particular context you're in, like, for example, there was one woman who was appointed as a leader of a country in Africa by a ISKCON guru who actually deviated. And during the period that he deviated, he started making women sannyasis and appointing them as leaders, right? So this woman was a leader in, I forget which country it was in Africa. I think, anyway, I'll remember it. And in that country, there was a civil war going on. And one time, the rebel leader of one side, who was against the government, came to listen to her lecture. And in the lecture, she said, and the rebels should put down their arms. There should be peace. We should not continue this fighting. The next day, he sent his soldiers with machine guns and machine gunned that girl and a whole bunch of devotees. Killed them. Right? So, you see, when you're a leader, you have to be very careful what you say, especially if you're in a country where there's a civil war going on, right? You say the wrong thing, it can be the death of the people that depend on you. And she also was murdered. So women should not take these positions because officially, but they can have this position and the respect unofficially because of their what you would call extraordinary qualities. And unofficially, they can be leaders, just like a woman who trains her child to become a pure devotee is a leader of society. They are natural gurus, and they should be respected like that. And that was a tradition in the Vedic society. Satyavati was respected like that. And other great women, such as Arundhati, of course, Sita Devi, Mother Yasoda, and so forth. Mother Yasoda was the guru of her son. Her son's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, by careful study of the scripture and discussion and looking at the principle of Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanto, what have the great authorities in Krishna consciousness done in the past? We can understand what is the proper way to proceed in the future. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There's some more points here we'll discuss tomorrow. Hare Krishna.